Bees make successful pollination possible. If you could help bees do a better job naturally, increasing your odds of a higher fruit set, wouldn't you want to do it? With over 40 years of experience, research, and development, the Pollen Bank helps farmers increase yields by supplying compatible and disease-free pollen, especially for almond, pistachio, cherry, and olive orchards. We specialize in providing top-quality pollen, and we test to measure the prescribed dose for the number of viable pollens to be applied per acre, VPPA, to obtain optimum results for consistency from pollen applied to your bees, which will help you maximize profits.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tom Ferrari, and I'm the owner and manager of the Pollen Bank located here in Bakersfield, California. Well, I've been into pollen research starting in 1975 at Cornell University, where I studied pollen biology for 10 years. Then I started consulting for pollen supply companies in California, and eventually decided to come to California and strike out on my own. We have been doing things that are unique in the pollen supply business, unique in the world. Nobody else measures the nutrient content of the flowers that the farmer or grower intends to pollinate. If there's a problem with the nutrients, then we can detect it and offer a suggestion on how to correct it so that the grower gets the maximum utilization and value from the pollen that he applies to his flowers.
We start by conducting a pollen bioassay early in the season before fertilization and flower set occurs, when there is time to amend a nutrient deficiency, or equally important, eliminate unnecessary and costly fertilizer applications.
This is the laboratory area where we do much of the quality control and vitality analysis of both the pollen that we collect, in this case pistachio and almond, pollen we receive from other suppliers, or pollen we receive from individual customers and their orchards. The pollen is evaluated in the presence of 8 different nutrients: boron, calcium, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, potassium, and iron. The pollen is first suspended into a sucrose solution, then aliquots of it are injected into each of the nutrients that we are testing. The vitality is then estimated by placing individual samples into this black template from each one of these wells. It holds 96 different samples. The template is then placed into a machine called a florimeter. The florimeter is able to inject a dye into each one of those wells. And then the pollen grains begin to glow. And you notice that some of the pollen grains glow a little bit brighter than others. The machine, the florimeter, is able to measure the total glow as a measure of vitality. Pollen grains that are dead, marked in red, do not glow at all. After we're done with the analysis, we report the results to each of our growers and customers.
Hi, my name is Anna. I work here at the Pollen Bank. I've been here for like 9 years. What I do is I answer phones, I take phone orders from our customers, and I ship their pollen overnight because it is important that they get it the next day because it has to be kept frozen. The kinds of pollens that we collect here at the Pollen Bank is almond, pistachio, cherry, kiwi, date, and olive.
This area of the facility is where we store our pollen, perform repairs, and manufacture equipment. This freezer is where we store the pollen at minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. This part of the facility is called the curing room. The curing room used to be a fire station where they parked the fire trucks. We've converted it into an area where we cure the flower parts that we collect in the field.
It usually takes several viable and compatible grains to complete the fertilization process. We test for viable pollen per gram and recommend 100 million viable pollens per acre. Fertilization is a race against time. The sooner the compatible pollen tube reaches an egg, the more likely flower set will occur. We make sure the pollen you purchase from us is viable and disease-free.
It's here where we sample the pollens that we prepared and then actually count the number of viable pollens that are contained in 1 gram of a sample. Here we're counting visually the number of viable pollens per gram. There we go. Those are 3 pollen grains that are viable. They're glowing. Now we can find some that are not glowing. There's one that's not glowing. There's another one that's not glowing next to a live one. There's a dead one. So we'll sit here, we'll start at the bottom of the slide, and we'll count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, etc. This way we're able to determine how many viable pollens there are in a gram, and then we're able to sell so many grams or viable pollens per acre. That's the dose, viable pollens per acre. And our dose typically is 100 million viable pollens per acre, 150 million viable pollens per acre for almonds, for example, or 1 billion viable pollens per acre for other pollens that are windborne.
Optimum beehive activity is 100 bees per minute, or when there are too many to count. When the dispenser has been placed, ideally 2 to 3 days in advance of 15% bloom, distribute 2 heaping tablespoons of disease-free pollen, leaving room at both ends for bees to enter and exit. Pollen should be dispersed in about 20 minutes. A second application can be applied at 30% bloom.
These are beehives you might typically find in an orchard that are used for pollination of the flowers. What a grower has to do if they're about to perform a supplemental pollination is ahead of time pick the strongest of beehives in the orchard. During the daytime, if you like this hive, place it on the lid like that and mark it. Then you can come back in the evening or in the early morning and then place it on the entrance in a manner similar to that. This is almond pollen, and it comes in a ready-to-pour tube. I like to make a little funnel out of it. Pour the pollen into the entrance. Leave a small area here and a small area here so they can find the entrance. You don't plug it up. And in 20 minutes, if that beehive is active, the pollen will be dispersed throughout the entire colony. This is a pistachio orchard located near Bakersfield, California, and it's composed of both male and female trees. They have separate trees. The females bear the flowers where the nuts are set, and the males bear the flowers where the pollen is produced. This is one of the typical problems we find in pollination of flowers. That involves bloom overlap. The male and the female just simply don't bloom simultaneously to pollinate each other. This is a female tree which bears female flowers and the nuts. These flowers are all open. This flower is history. It's no longer receptive. These flowers will be receptive for about 24 to 48 hours, and then they will lose their receptivity. If you look into the tops of the trees, you see 80% of the flowers are in this stage of development, receptive and waiting to be pollinated. Now the problem is there's very little pollen in the air to pollinate these flowers. This tree over here is a male, which shows the problem, identified by the red band. These are some male flowers. The pollen is used to fertilize the flowers on the female trees. However, this is the problem here. is the males are not blooming or shedding their pollen. They will not produce pollen in time to fertilize the majority of the females that are presently in bloom now. So this is where we're called in to solve this problem by performing a supplemental pollination to circumvent the shortage of pollen present in this orchard. This is where the pollen applicator device that we prepared and devised and designed comes in handy. It can distribute literally 100 or 200 grams of pollen per acre in a slow, methodical manner, releasing the pollen into the atmosphere to blow amongst the trees and fertilize the flowers. This particular tube contains about 250 grams of pollen. Right there is about 1 gram of pollen. This is the hopper. We pour the pollen in the hopper. This is the on-off switch. This is a rotating auger. The rotating auger forces the pollen into this tube here where a fan blows the pollen out the tube, and it's perforated with several small holes so the pollen will come out.